I worked with Kamala Harris when she was Senator Harris. I saw a leader who was fearless, who stood up for middle-class families like the one she was raised in.
There we go again. Everybody pay attention to this middle-class rhetoric. They keep saying this. They said it last night. They're saying it tonight. Middle-class family that she was raised in. Middle-class families. That is who they're trying to focus on. How much of the middle class do we have in this country that is left? A lot of you may think you're middle class, but if you look at the poverty line in your state, you're probably not middle class anymore because the middle class has been incredibly shrinking. A lot of people that were middle class are now part of the working poor. So we always have to take this into consideration, right? They're not talking about the working poor and they're not talking about people who are poor. These people are disposable to them. So obviously they're not going to have this message for the wealthy. They're going to take it back to the middle class. We'll get to Bernie in just a second.
Who focused on things that really mattered. Helping parents raise their kids. Safe neighborhoods, safe schools, and building an opportunity economy that gives everyone a shot at the American dream. She will lead America forward into a brighter future, but she can't do it alone. She needs a Democratic majority in the Senate of the United States.
We're going to fast forward to Bernie. Let's go ahead and fast forward to Bernie there, Eric, because here we go. I told you they do that, right? Because all the things that she's going to promise, they're going to tell you that you have to have the majority in the Senate and in the House in order for those things to happen. And then they still won't do shit. This is exactly what Obama has done. This is what Joe Biden did. And a lot of people forget about that Obama had the House and the Senate those first 2 years, and he could have codified Roe v. Wade as he promised when he was running for president. And then he decided to change his mind after he won, and he blamed it all on Lieberman. But he still could have codified, abolished the filibuster. He could have done that. Okay, there we go. Let's bring in Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. My fellow Americans, it is an honor to be with you tonight because we're laying the groundwork for Kamala Harris to become our next president. And let me tell you why that is so important. I want you all to remember where we were 3.5 years ago.
Oh, we remember.
We were in the midst of the worst public health crisis in 100 years and the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. 3,000 Americans were dying every day, and our hospitals were overwhelmed with COVID patients. All across the country, businesses were shutting down. Unemployment was soaring. Workers were losing their health insurance.
That still happens, by the way. Workers are still losing their health insurance. But to add to that, Bernie, you know what else was happening at that point in time? There was a movement called Force the Vote, where it called on politicians in DC to push for Medicare for all, to not vote for Nancy Pelosi or hold that floor vote hostage to implement a Medicare for all system. Now, some people disagreed with the strategy, et cetera. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, that would have shown us who's who, and we would have known who would have said no to the American people to have health insurance for everybody during a pandemic, when all those people were sick, when all those people, you had people that were dying and people were losing their health insurance. That was the most, I think, important time to have something like that pass. Now, as much as Bernie Sanders ran on Medicare for all, here you are out here, as usual, promoting the candidate that is corporate and is against Medicare for all. You did it with Joe Biden. You did it with Hillary Clinton. And now you're doing it with Kamala Harris. So what movement were you trying to get us to do?
Schools were closing. State and city budgets were running out of money. People were being evicted from their homes. Children in America were going hungry. That was the reality the Biden-Harris administration faced as they entered the Oval Office. A nation suffering, a nation frightened, and people looking to their government for support. And within 2 months of taking office, our government did respond. We passed the American Rescue Plan, which provided $1,400 for every man, woman, and child in the working class. We extended and expanded benefits for the unemployed.
And I'm not here to say those weren't good things that were done, but given the heightened pandemic and stress of the American people during that point in time, and given all the money that you guys have no problem giving to the war machine, right? Over $868 billion defense budget there. You should have done more. People shouldn't have lost their businesses. People shouldn't have lost their homes. You know how many businesses closed here in Boston? You know how many of those businesses were Black owned that closed? You talking about helping the kids. The kids are still hungry. I know, because I feed them. We feed them. We do mutual aid. These kids are still hungry. So when you say you cut child poverty in half, we should not have child poverty in this country at all. The money is being spent in incorrect places. We have too much money going to the war machine, and that's why people are not taken care of in this country. And Bernie Sanders will tell you this when he was on the campaign trail. Bernie Sanders will call out the billionaires. He'll still do that now. But at the end of the day, Bernie will continue to tell you to support the people who are against everything that he just said. So he is continuing the war machine. He is continuing corporate capture of politicians. So he's a part of the problem. He's not a part of the solution anymore. And yes, I was a part of that Bernie movement too. But at some point, some of you got to wake up and you got to start pointing your fingers at him too, because you don't get that many people out in the streets, thousands of people at rallies for you, starting a political movement, and then you turn your back on it and say, well, you got to support this person. Otherwise, we're going to get Donald Trump. You could have won. Do people not understand this? The Democratic Party, they cheated you. You could have left the Democratic Party. Even as an independent, you could have won. And some people, they don't want to admit this, but we got to come to grips with this. The amount of passion and energy that Bernie had during those campaigns, Bernie Sanders could have won. He could have left all of this, left the Democratic Party, ran as an independent. You had your people. You had your coalition. You weren't trying to build one. It's not like you're like RFK. RFK's trying to build. He was trying to build. You had a coalition. You had 2 presidential elections in a row. You had people coming out to see you that were packing stadiums, son. People show up thinking it's a concert. It wasn't a concert. It was you. You had the momentum, but in the end of the day, you decided to tuck your tail between your legs. Now you want to go on Theo Vaughn's show and you want to tell Theo that the Democratic Party cheated you. You should have said that back then. You should have said that back then. And you still continue to back the same party that cheated you. We could have had a real political revolution in this country if you didn't tuck your tail between your legs and say, let's get behind Hillary Clinton. Let's get behind Joe Biden. You didn't want a political revolution. You took all that energy and pushed it right back into the corporate Democratic Party and lost all that momentum. And now here he is to tell you to support another corporate Democrat, Kamala Harris. Remember when they told you don't support candidates that take corporate money? Remember when they told you support the grassroots base? None of that matters anymore.
We provided emergency assistance for small businesses to stay open. We guaranteed health care coverage to tens of millions of Americans through one of the largest expansions of Medicaid in history.
And right after that expansion, Joe Biden kicked people off of Medicaid.
We provided rent relief and mortgage assistance, which prevented tenants and homeowners from being evicted. We established emergency food programs for hungry children and the elderly, and protected the pensions of millions of union workers and retirees from being slashed by up to 65%. Oh, and by the way, we cut childhood poverty by over 40% through an expanded child tax credit.
Oh, so it's no longer that they cut child poverty in half. Now it's 40%. Oh, man. I think Bernie froze.
Thank you, President Biden.
Okay.
Thank you, Vice President Harris. Thank you, Democratic Congress. Now, I say all of this not to relive that difficult moment, but to make one simple point. When the political will is there, government can effectively deliver for the people of our country. And now we need to summon that will again, because too many of our fellow Americans are struggling every day to just get by, to put food on the table, to pay the rent, and to get the health care they need. Brothers and sisters, bottom line, we need an economy that works for all of us, not just the billionaire class. My fellow Americans, when 60% of our people live paycheck to paycheck, the top 1% have never, ever had it so good. And these oligarchs tell us we shouldn't tax the rich. The oligarchs tell us we shouldn't take on price gouging. We shouldn't expand Medicare to cover dental, hearing, and vision. And we shouldn't increase Social Security benefits for struggling seniors. Well, I've got some bad news for them. That is precisely what we are going to do. And we're going to win this struggle because this is precisely what the American people want from their government. And my friends, at the very top of that to-do list is the need to get big money out of our political process.
Get big money out of our political process while I tell you to support the candidates that take big money. Everybody see the con game now? Everybody see the game? Okay.
Billionaires in both parties should not be able to buy elections, including primary elections. For the sake of our democracy, we must overturn the disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision and move toward public funding of elections. And let me tell you what else we must do.
Pause. If he really believed that we should move away from that, the corporate funding of these politicians, why isn't Bernie Sanders getting behind Jill Stein? Why isn't Bernie Sanders promoting Jill Stein why not? Why isn't Bernie Sanders promoting any of the candidates that are running outside the duopoly that are just taking grassroots donations if he really believes that big money needs to get out of electoral politics? Now people say, oh, because we know that they're not going to win. Bernie knows they're not going to win. I would imagine that if Bernie Sanders and AOC said, everybody, you need to get behind the duopoly candidates that are grassroots based, you need to get behind them because we need to stop supporting the politicians that are taking corporate money, I'm willing to bet a lot of people would jump on that train. It's just a matter of who it is coming from. So people who still support Bernie, if he made the reason for that, made it very passionate and explained to them, we got to walk away from this, I'm pretty sure people would jump on that train. He had the opportunity to do that after 2016. He had the opportunity to do that in 2020. But Bernie said no both times. So again, you can't walk away from a corporate system if you're still telling people to support the candidates that take the corporate money. So if you want corporate money to be removed from electoral politics, you should be doing everything in your power by supporting those candidates that are running those grassroots campaigns, like a Jill Stein, like a Claudia de la Cruz, but you're not. This is what I try to tell you. This is how you know this is a game. It's not even chess no more. It's checkers. Maybe it was chess 5-6 years ago, but now it's just checkers. If you pay attention, this is what they do. So they send Bernie Sanders out there every now and then to talk about how we need to be more left and how we need to get the corporate money out and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, they also send Bernie Sanders out there to tell you to support that corporate candidate because you don't want to get Donald Trump. But there's always going to be another Donald Trump. There will always be a Republican that is the opposition to the Democratic Party, which means if you continue down that road, you're not really going to get anywhere.
Need to join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to all people as a human right, not a privilege. We need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. We need to pass the PRO Act so that workers can organize in unions and gain the decent pay and benefits they deserve. We need to strengthen public education, raise teachers' salaries, and make sure that every American, regardless of income, receives the higher education he or she needs.
Again, I agree with all these things. I agree with all of it. But Bernie knows that's not going to happen under Kamala Harris, just like it didn't happen under Joe Biden. It's not going to happen through the Democratic Party.
We need to take on Big Pharma and cut our prescription drug cost in half so that we no longer pay any more than other countries. Joe and Kamala made sure that no senior in America pays over $35 a month for insulin. We need to make sure that reality is true for every American. I look forward to working with Kamala and Tim to pass this agenda. And let us be very clear. This is not a radical agenda. But let me tell you what a radical agenda is. And that is Trump's Project 2025.
Here we go.
At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, giving more tax breaks to billionaires is radical. Putting forth budgets to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid is radical. Letting polluters destroy our planet is radical. And my friends, we won't let that happen.
It really is the same story over and over again, right? Again, my comrade and I, like JB and I, we went through Project 2025 on Revolutionary Blackout Network. And like I told you, it's not good. It's not good news. But at the same time, it's not new. That was the thing. I was like, they've been trying to do this. So it's not like this is a brand new idea, that kind of thing. Like, these are the things they've been pushing for quite some time. But the reality is, you can't always fearmonger people with the Project 2025. When you walk outside the door and you don't even know that if when you come home, your lights are still going to be on because you can't pay your light bill. You can't scare people and threaten people with the Project 2025 if you just keep getting laid off. I talked to one person, they've been laid off twice this year, not to their fault at all. But these companies are laying off people in masses. See, you're not really thinking about Project 2025, these things are happening. If you go talk to people that live in a lot of like the lower income neighborhoods, they're not thinking about this. They're not thinking about this. If you go to the hood and you talk to people and say, are you going to come out and vote 2024? And most of them going to tell you no. And if you say, but what about Project 2025? They're going to be like, motherfucker, what? Most people they're not thinking about this. They're not worried about that. They're worried about those bread and butter issues, those kitchen table issues that they got to deal with. They're worried about keeping the lights on. They're worried about paying rent next month. They're worried about those kind of things. And yes, there is the issue with women's rights. There is that issue. And I always bring it back to Obama because he ran on that. He said that would be the first thing that he would do if he became president, and then he walked away from it. We could have had Roe v. Wade codified into law. So there's that. There is always going to be something that they're going to fearmonger you about. And what I am saying is that eventually it gets to the point where you are going to have to actually do something for the people, and you can't just keep winning because you're fearmongering people. And I don't know what else to say to people anymore. But the reality is that you have to do for these people. Nobody should be poor in this country. Not one person, period. Nobody should have to have multiple jobs in this country. Not one person. So it's just Project 2025. Yes, it is bad. It is not a good thing. But that shouldn't be the only reason why you feel like, oh, I gotta go support Kamala Harris because I'm scared of that. It's always gonna be something they're gonna scare you with. That's why you don't get anything, especially if you're Black voters. Black voters, we don't get anything for our vote. You sit back and you watch the Democratic Party, they'll do all these things. They will make concessions, agree to concessions for Latino Americans. They'll agree to concessions for those that are dreamers. Remember, they made these things happen. The anti-Asian hate crime bill. Like, they'll do things for other groups. But Black voters, we don't get anything. There's been a conversation about reparations for American descendants of slavery for years. And the studies and the research have already been done. When we ask for things, they sit up there and tell us we need to study that. They don't tell these other groups they got to study it. So that's what kills me when someone comes to me and they're like, you're a Black female. You have to be afraid. I ain't got to be afraid of anything. All I got to do is stay Black and die. Do people not understand that? Jeez Louise.
Fellow Americans, in the last 3.5 years, working together, we have accomplished more than any government since FDR. But much, much more remains to be done. We must summon the courage to stand up to wealth and power and deliver justice for people at home and abroad. Abroad, we must end this horrific war in Gaza. Bring home the hostages and demand an immediate ceasefire.
Notice how they all have the same rhetoric, the ceasefire and bring home the hostages. Notice they're not calling it a genocide anymore. Let's wait for a minute. Let's see if he does that.
At home right here, we must take on big pharma, big oil, big ag, big tech, and all the other corporate monopolists whose greed is denying progress for working people. On November 5th, let us elect Kamala Harris as our president, and let us go forward.
So let me just say this, folks. Now, he talking about ending the corporate greed, getting corporate money out of electoral politics. Don't forget that Wall Street is backing Kamala Harris. Don't forget that Wall Street is supporting Kamala Harris. Don't forget who Kamala Harris is taking money from. So how are you going to tell us we need to end corporate greed and we need to get big money out of electoral politics, but then you're telling us to support Kamala Harris, who's taking big money in electoral politics? I wasn't born last night. This is the same game that Bernie continues to do. And honestly, I'm getting pretty tired of hearing from Bernie Sanders, to be honest with you. I think it would be best if Bernie just go ahead and retire. Makes me kind of wonder why he's still kind of hanging around, because I honestly feel like his goal is to get the younger base energetic and build up our, build up your passion and everything, and then just funnel you right back into the Democratic Party in the same corporate system that he told you to leave. That's why they bring him out. That's why they bring AOC out. Jasmine Crockett, although Jasmine isn't as left as AOC, but that's why they bring them out, to keep the young people going in that direction, to prevent you from starting something new, to prevent you from organizing within the streets. I know, I saw all of this with Obama. I was that person. I was that young person that sat there and saw Barack Obama and said, this is going to be the hope and the change that we've been waiting for. Now you see the same artist that made the Obama poster has made the Kamala poster. Same artist. And they said, doesn't this make you feel happy? Doesn't this give you good vibes? No, hell to the no. When I see that poster of Kamala Harris made the same way as the poster of Barack Obama that said hope at the bottom, that just brings back old memories that I was trying to forget. It reminds me of the 2008 housing crisis. It reminds me of Obama killing brown kids in Libya. Things like that. It reminds me of Barack Obama pretending to drink that dirty water in Flint, Michigan in front of all those black people. Shit like that. That's what it reminds me of. When you look at people like Barack Obama and Kamala Harris, what you have to understand is they are not representative of the majority of people in the black community. They're the ones that are the exception. And notice how they always pick the same. And yes, they have been selected. Not one of you voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 Democratic primary. Hello. Not one of you voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 Democratic primary. And everybody's just going along with this as if it's okay. Not one of you. They selected a candidate who is a woman of color and put that person in front of you and said, this will be great because this will energize the young people. And then she'll just need to separate herself from Biden and everybody will be back on board all over again. just running her on identity politics. That's why she still has no policy platform on her damn website. And people fell for it. We still have a lot of education to teach people in this country, because people need to know how these parties work, how they function. People need to understand where the money is coming from and where it's going. They just threw this woman right in front of you and people just ate it up and said, oh, she's an AKA and she's a and nah. The majority of Black Americans are not a part of the boule. The majority of Black Americans are not AKAs, are not former Greek life. The majority of Black Americans don't go to Howard University. What about those people? They select people from the Black boule and they put them in front of you. Barack Obama was groomed from day one. And they tell you this is who represents you. These are the people you need to look up to. These are the people that you need to aspire to be like. They are chosen and they usually kind of look the same, because I don't see no dark-skinned Black people up in front that they select like that. They damn sure didn't do it with Cynthia McKinney. They got rid of her real quick, to the point where Cynthia McKinney moved to another country because she was tired of dealing with the BS. She was calling out Israel way before a lot of people were. They all tend to look the same. Everybody notice this? Now they can make an exception with Michelle Obama. They can make an exception with her, because a lot of people do like Michelle Obama. I think she's more well-liked than Barack Obama is, from what I read. But they handpick these people. They handpick them. They pick people that they think you should be like. Then they try to tell you who is you and all this stuff and what because and all this. Kamala Harris didn't have no struggle. Yes, she lived with her mother. But Kamala Harris, if you look at the receipts, I have to pull those up on Twitter. You look at the receipts. Her mother came from her brother was the Brahmin class in India. So it's not like her mama was poor. Let's think about this. Let's stop pretending. Let's stop pretending that Kamala Harris grew up in like this poverty because she was raised by a single mom. The experience that Kamala Harris had being raised by a single mother with her sister, and her mother was a PhD student. And she came from a certain class in India, okay, where she had the money and the funds to come over here in the first damn place, all right? That is not the same experience that my family members have had who grew up with a single mother in the projects in Baltimore, okay? So let's stop trying to make it seem like it's the same. This is what the media and the Democratic Party is putting in front of you, and they're trying to make you think your experience is like hers. It's not like hers. Most Black people I know do not have that experience. They did not have that upbringing. Most Black people I know that had a single mom, their mom didn't have the funds to send them to move to Montreal and get them a decent education. But that's who's supposed to be us now? Get out of here, man. Get out of here. I'll believe it when I see them pick someone who grew up in the hood, whether it's Camden, New Jersey or Baltimore. I'll believe it when I see that person rise to the top, okay? Let's let him finish.
To create the nation we know we can become. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Yeah. And like, no disrespect to the people, like some of you are new that are watching me. You're probably like, why is this woman so upset? I don't get it. I just don't I've seen this game played so many times. And I got to tell you guys, you don't get to be where those people are in that position just because you did a good job. These people are selected and they have to be willing to play the game. And you can choose to believe whatever you want. At the end of the day, I'm not going to be in the voting booth with you. You're going to vote for whoever you want to vote for. I just don't want you to fall for the game. I just don't want you to sit up there and think that all of a sudden you're going to get this transformational like change coming your way. It's not. That's not what's going to happen. So the way that we get around that is we organize locally, which I do, and we build dual power. But I think a lot of people are just sitting back and they're waiting for a politician to save the day. And these people are not heroes.